Hi, kindergarten. It's Miss Lassard, and I'm here to read our next story in Colonial Towns and Townspeople. Today, we are going to do lesson 3, Millers and Bakers. Last week, we heard all about what life was like in a colonial town. We heard that people would go to a town to trade for goods or if they needed help making something. Today, we will learn about bakers and millers. All over the world for thousands of years, bread has been an important part of many people's diets. In almost every culture, people make bread or foods like bread. In Mexico, they eat tortillas. In India, they eat chapati. In Israel, they eat matzo. And in America, we may eat any of the above. Plus, bagels, muffins, biscuits, and sliced bread. In colonial times, most breads were made from wheat or corn. Where did the wheat and corn come from? Right, the farmer. But it was a long process from the farmer's field to the baker's shop. Today, we're going to learn about what and who was involved with making bread. I wonder what your favorite type of bread is. Do you like bagels? Do you like muffins? Do you like sliced bread to make a sandwich? Do you like tortillas? Think about what your favorite bread is. First, the farmer planted his crops of wheat and corn. Then he harvested them or picked them when they were fully grown. Next, the farmer had to separate out the seeds or grains from the plant. Then the seeds had to be ground into flour. A long time ago, people used to grind their own wheat grains or corn kernels with big stones called grindstones. So we'll see what a grindstone is in just a second, but I have a question below. From which plant is flour made? If you look over in our text, it says that farmers use their crops of wheat or corn. So you can use wheat or corn, and that's a way that you make flour. So if you look in this picture below, you see like all the little seeds. It looks kind of fuzzy on this plant. They have to separate the plant part from the root and all the other pieces of a plant and take out the individual seeds to make the grain for flour. So it says that they used grindstones. So let's see what grindstones are. Why are you taking so long? I don't know why this slide isn't working. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Let's try that again. Computer is being a little slow today. Here we go. All right, we'll just look at it here. Yeah, that's fine. So this just looks like a giant rock with the little rock on top of it. That's a grindstone. The top one is one from like a really, really, really long time ago. And then the one below is one that's similar to what the colonial townspeople would have used as their grindstones. So early grindstones used by native people all over the world were like the ones in this picture. One stone was larger and either flat or bowl-shaped, and the other stone was usually small enough to be held in the hand. The person grinding would spread some grains on the larger stone and grind them with the smaller stone. Imagine grinding two stones together all day long just to get enough flour to make one loaf of bread. It was hard work. Eventually, people found a quicker way to do the job, introducing the mill. Mills existed in Europe long before people settled in America. A mill did the same thing as a person with a grindstone. It crushed the grains of wheat between two stones. The stones in the mill were called millstones, and they were very, very large. far too large for a person to lift. Instead of a person grinding the stones together, a giant machine grinds the heavy millstones in a mill together. The bigger the millstones, the more grain the mill could crush into flour. So it sounds like people were getting really tired of having to grind up all their grains with one of these rocks. So they invented something that would make it easier. All right, let's see if I can go back. There we go. Water mills were the most common type of mill in early America. They were built right on the rivers. The fast-flowing water made the big wheel turn around. The wheel was connected to the gears that made the millstones inside the building turn. The heavy weight of the stones pressed hard to grind the grains. So you can see in this picture right next to me here, do you see that big wheel? The water pushed that wheel along, and then inside of that little house would be a rock that would crush as the wheel spun. It's a pretty cool invention. The tradesperson in charge of the mill was called a miller. The miller would charge farmers money or some of their grains to grind their wheat or corn into flour. The miller would grind the grain into flour, then collect the flour into bags. A miller with a water mill could grind and bag more flour in one day than a farmer with a grindstone could grind in weeks. Once the flour was ground, the miller sold some of it to the baker. The baker made bread, muffins, and cake out of the flours he got from the miller. So, how does a miller make flour? The miller uses his machines to grind up all the grains, and then the miller would put them in big bags like the ones in that picture. Now we're going to read about the next step in making bread, which is making dough. To make dough, the baker mixed a lot of flour with a little bit of water and a little bit of salt. He also added a special ingredient called yeast. The yeast made the bread puff up and rise when it was baked. Next, the baker kneaded the dough. Kneading dough is like pressing and stretching the dough together lots of different ways to make sure that the ingredients are all evenly mixed and the dough has the right consistency or texture. Certain kinds of bread had to be kneaded for a long time before the dough was ready to bake. Next, the baker shaped the dough, either by patting it with his hands or rolling it with a big rolling pin. Then it was time to put the bread in the oven. In the old days, ovens were brick or stone structures with a fire inside. When the bread was just the right shade of brown, the baker took it out of the oven and let it cool for a while. Can't you just smell that wonderful aroma? That's freshly baked bread. Warm bread ready to eat. So the ingredients in dough, you need to take that flour that the miller makes, you have to add water and salt, and then you have to add yeast because yeast will make your bread nice and plump like in the picture over there. And you have to knead the dough for a really long time, just like in that picture with your hands, to get all the ingredients mixed up. And then you can cook it and have bread. Bread is still made today in more ways. In the same way it was made in early America 300 years ago. The first step is making the dough. Bakers have to get up extra early, sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning, to start making dough and start baking bread for their first customers. Even today, in many parts of the world, hungry customers stand outside the bakery door first thing in the morning to buy their bread and other breakfast treats. There is nothing better than fresh baked goodies to start your day. I'm wondering, have any of you ever been to a bakery like the one in that picture? I know that in the bakeries, it smells really good in there, especially if the bread has just been made. So we learned all about millers and bakers today and how a wheat or plant or a piece of corn gets all the way to be turned into bread, which is pretty cool. Next week, we're going to learn about the people in colonial towns who made clothes. So in this picture, that's a little hint of what we'll see next time. Do you ever think about how something like your t-shirt gets made? Well, we're going to hear how people in colonial times made their clothes, and I'm so excited. So thank you all for joining, and I'll see you all next week. Bye, friends.